Nate, she studied a Bachelor of Science in nursing. That makes her very knowledgeable on all things NF. You may know Kate's name from her YouTube series, Ask Kate, where she answers questions that come in globally from the NF community. We're so thankful for your time today, Kate. Thank you so much.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, Jasmine.
Tonight, we'll also have Meredith and Ruth join us, support coordinators from the Children's Tumor Foundation Australia. We're recording this session so that it can be a resource for now and for the future. I think it's something really important. So welcome, Kate, and thank you.
Thank you. Ruth has a couple of questions on schwannomatosis.
Do indeed. And I know we talked about pain before, but this one was, we were talking with a group of women with schwannomatosis, and they were talking about their pain and their reluctance to take lots of pain medication, even though their pain load was quite high, but they all discussed how they used alternate therapies. And what are your thoughts on some of these? Like they wanted to hear your thoughts on CBD oil, essential oils, magnesium, Voltaren, which is a muscle gel. Do you have any thoughts on those kinds of?
Yeah.
I know you discussed it before, but is there any particular one of them you think, yeah, that's what I've heard that people find very helpful?
Yeah. No, I think this is great. So I in general, I think considering alternative therapies for any type of treatment of pain is really fantastic. I think that working with your doctor is really important because these things, while a lot of them, might be mostly safe, they're not always well studied. There's not controlled scientific clinical trials showing, how CBD oil might affect pain or how any of the things that you've talked about, right? So I think that exploring those options and working with your doctor to kind of talk through what might be helping is really important. Schwannomatosis, honestly, a lot of times we refer to it as a pain syndrome. That can be the number one issue for people living with it. And it can often be what drives them to diagnosis in the first place, right? As they start having all this pain and they start seeing their doctors. And, I hear really frustrating stories about people where it takes 10 years for the correct diagnosis, right? And they're in pain that whole time. We're running a study here that's getting started looking at pain in schwannomatosis, which is really exciting because, again, it can be hard to get enough patients just because of how rare it is. But in terms of alternative treatments to pain, I can't say anything specific about any of the ones you mentioned in terms of that definitely this one's used a lot or that one. I know that they're all things that these people have tried because you try what's available when you're in a lot of pain. So my number one recommendation always, I already said it, I'll say it again, is that anything that you want to try, just talk to your doctor about it. If you're working with a doctor and anytime you mention anything alternative, they give you attitude and they're annoyed with you and they think everything I don't know how easy this is, but that's not a great doctor to work with. I really am an advocate for you are the most important part of your medical team, right? You are your best advocate and anything you bring to the table should be respected and treated in a respectful way. And it's okay if your doctor says, I don't think this is a safe option for you, that's fine. But then they're responsible to explain why and to help you understand, why that might not be the best. I will say with essential oils that they do make me a little nervous because they turned, I don't know how in Australia, but in America, they turned into this very big home sales business. And some of those, okay. Yeah. And some of those I don't think are as safe. So if you want to try essential oils, maybe again, doing some good research and speaking with your provider about where to source those from.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention any particular brand in regards to that. You're right, checking with your doctor. And I say the same to people, even starting here in Australia, you start with your GP. Finding that GP, they don't have to be an expert on NF, but if they listen to you and you're saying, I'm in pain, and they're like, well, I will try and help you sort that out, that's you're winning. I think that's really the starting point. So that's really good.
Or find another one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And then, yeah, you just, that's the great starting point, because if they're not listening in the beginning, as you say, you know,
Mhm.
where do you go from there? So that's very good. The other one was, have you ever heard of any links with Schwannomatosis and learning difficulties?
Oh, so that's an interesting question. So I have not. In fact, in general, we do not see a strong, like a statistical correlation between learning disabilities or difficulties in NF2 or Schwinnomatosis. That doesn't mean it wouldn't be there, but we wouldn't necessarily think that it would be because of the other diagnosis, because obviously learning disabilities occur in the general population. And so I don't think there's any reason not to. Also, I think the other issue too is if you think about schwannomatosis being diagnosed mostly in adults, and so you would probably already be aware that you have some learning difficulties, and then later you would get a schwannomatosis diagnosis. But again, we don't really see a connection between those two things statistically.
That's what I thought, but I'm glad we asked, because I thought that's a good question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there an increase in breast cancer in people with schwannomatosis that you know of? Is there any link there at all?
Yeah, so this was a good one, and I really struggle to. So with any kind of like tumor predisposition syndrome, I think we need to be careful to be screening for things. But I don't see a specific recommendation like for here, as you had mentioned earlier there as well, the recommendations for women with NF1 have shifted to be a bit more, for lack of a better word, a bit more aggressive in screening for breast cancer. That does not seem to be the case in schwannomatosis. Again, a lot of patients are diagnosed with schwannomatosis in their like 50s and older, right? And at that point, they're already being screened, hopefully, in a regular way, right? So I don't know, honestly. I think it's a great question. And I couldn't find anything to give me an answer I felt was like solid, like I could say this or that. So I just don't know that the information is out there at this point.
Thank you. That's all. I think that's all our questions for tonight.
I just thought before you go, our community are just desperate for information on research, and just if you could give us a general overview of what you think are the most sort of noteworthy and promising research studies that are underway at the moment. So you've talked about the cream, which I think people will be really excited about. We've got the MEK inhibitor trials starting here. So you're a bit further advanced in it being approved over there. But just anything else that you think is new and noteworthy that people would like to know.
Sure. So one thing is that with the approval of Cosela, which is the selumetinib would be the general name, the generic name for that. We're now running a bunch of studies looking at, do they have to stay on it forever? What happens if they come off of it? Can we have off for a while and then back on? So there's a bunch of research looking at that. We're also looking at that drug for a lot of other uses. We're looking at it for NF2 tumors. We're looking at it for the cutaneous neurofibromas. Obviously the gel is a topical option, which is fantastic, but they are actually looking at the classic pill version of selumetinib for cutaneous neurofibromas. So they're basically saying, we see that this works. Let's see if it works on all of these other things, right? So that's one thing I think is exciting, and we'll have more information in the coming years. The schwannomatosis study that is starting up at Johns Hopkins here is really exciting. It's looking at a drug called tanezumab, and it's looking at particularly its impact on pain and whether it can be used as a treatment for pain in schwannomatosis. Because one thing we know is that often the pain in schwannomatosis does not respond to classic interventions, right, in terms of classic drug options. So that one is very exciting, and I'm looking forward. It's just getting started, so it'll be a while, but I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of that. And then I did mention briefly this Intuit platform trial. So in the NF2 community, I'm most excited about that. Just the possibility for the speed at which we could see a lot of different papers being published and results coming out, which of course then kind of speeds up that whole process from research to, something patients can access. So I'd say those are the things that I'm I'm most excited about that are kind of coming or in the works.
So much
Excellent.
hope for the future.
Yes, I agree, Jasmine.
We'd all like to thank you so much tonight for your time. I know it's so early in the morning over there, but your time is invaluable and we're so incredibly grateful to have you.
Well, I really enjoyed this. I like answering questions when I can. Hopefully my children waking up for the day is not something anyone can hear. So
Can't help that. Thank you so much, Kate.
thank you so much, ladies.
Thank
This
you,
was wonderful.
Kate.
I really
Please
appreciate
have a lovely
Very
day.
much. Thank you.
it. Bye, guys.